Welcome to On the Point Podcast, a podcast for all things Overwatch with a heavy focus on League, discussing roster moves, weekly matchups, and a double feature because it's been a couple weeks, you guys. These past couple weeks have been fun. And so we are going to cover 2 weeks worth of Overwatch League in one go because we do this sometimes. It's a good time for everybody.
Yep, it happens. We just life is a thing that we occasionally need to contend with before we can do this.
Life finds a way. And
Exactly.
so do we. Those are on Netflix. Love yourself. Watch Jurassic Park. Just the
Yes.
first two. Yeah, I'm Katie. I'm the support main.
I'm CJ, I'm the tank main.
And we're just going to swing right into it. Let's talk about the results of the Countdown Cup because, damn, y'all, this was wild.
Yeah. So let's start with NA. First off, Vancouver Titans take on the Atlanta Reign. Atlanta sweeps them 3-0. Houston Outlaws suffer the same fate with losing a sweep at the hands of the Valiant. The Washington Justice take on the Dallas Fuel in what I think is going to become a bit of a rivalry for the remainder of the season as it is,
Oh, yeah.
considering some news we'll talk about later. But
It's red versus blue.
oh god. And it's funny too because I was always a red team guy when it came to RVB, but
and here,
I'm the blue here.
oh, and
Uh,
I am 100% blue team when it comes to RVB,
yeah,
but I throw in behind Washington.
yeah. But in any case, Dallas takes the series with a narrow 3-2 victory. LA Gladiators take on the Toronto Defiant, and the Gladiators similarly squeak out a 3-2 victory. The Fuel go up against the Shock and suffer a 3-0 loss. The Gladiators suffer the same fate against the Philadelphia Fusion, as do the Atlanta Reign, likewise being swept by the Florida Mayhem. The LA Valiant, however, do manage to take a map in their game against the Paris Eternal. However, that's about the long and short of it, with Paris pulling ahead 3-1 to advance to the next round of the tournament. The semifinal matches of Florida Mayhem versus San Francisco Shock and Philadelphia Fusion versus Paris Eternal end in a orange doubleheader with San Francisco Shock and Philadelphia Fusion both winning 3-1 before facing each other in the grand finals, with Shock picking up the 4-2 victory. They are our champions once again.
Look how surprised I'm. I think we both picked them, if I'm remembering this
Yeah.
correctly. I may not be. But we had a lot of patterns going on here. Day one was either 3-0s or map 5s. Day two
Mm-hmm.
was a day of almost entirely 3 Overwatch.
Yeah.
And day three was a day of rematches. Florida versus San Francisco being a rematch of the May Melee, and Philadelphia versus Paris being a rematch of the Summer Showdown.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a lot of fun to watch. This was I thought the NA tournament was a lot of fun. I thought Saturday was a little straightforward, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Overwatch sometimes is that way, especially considering in NA we have a fairly big gap between the top 3 to 4 teams and everyone else. Like, the thing is, the Florida Mayhem, the San Francisco Shock, the Philadelphia Fusion, and the Paris Eternal right now will hands down slap any of the other teams outside of that little bracket of 4 in most scenarios. So
I
if you
was gonna
see
say,
them in most scenarios, obviously, that does not always hold true. Obviously, sometimes we have upsets. Sometimes one team or another doesn't perform up to their peak. And I think Florida Mayhem, we can say, since pretty much since Sparkle's been added to the Paris Eternal, like, at that point, Paris Eternal was the one that could kind of fall out of that top tier. And then after that, it's Mayhem that's kind of fallen out of that top tier and poking back in every once in a while.
yeah, I'm pretty sure Mayhem has the number 4 spot, and that's about right, honestly.
Yeah.
And I mean, given the way they were the first 2 seasons, this is amazing.
Oh, it really is. Like, I can't say enough good things about, because here's the thing. Like, a lot of people were very bearish about this roster, or bullish about this roster at the beginning of the season, and I wasn't. I thought that we were maybe seeing a bit of a false positive considering their strength of schedule at the end of the season and what I perceived to be some inflexibility in the roster that they had. And for the beginning of the season, it looked like I was right, but they've very much proven me wrong since then.
Yeah, it's not quite nobody expects the Florida Inquisition, but I think they've blown a lot of us out of the water in
Yeah.
terms of our expectations for that team.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things where I expected some of their players to be really, really good and some of them to be mediocre. And the guys who were previously mediocre, like BQB prior to this season, I would not have called, you know, a particularly scary DPS player at the Overwatch League level, and he is now. He very much is now.
Oh
And
yeah, no, he's a terror child, let's be real.
yeah, and Yaki just straight up fucks. Fate is having yeah,
If I weren't worried about our placement in the YouTube algorithm, that would be the title of this episode.
Yaki just straight up fucks. Um,
Yeah. I don't think I can put that out there, but damn.
yeah.
You're not wrong. He's in MVP consideration for a reason.
Yeah. Fate has absolutely picked himself up. Gargoyle has shown that he's got a lot of, playmaking potential on any off tank you stick him on. The back line has looked great, and Kuki has done an amazing job as head coach for this team. They tend to look very practiced and, prepared in the majority of the metas we've kind of seen over the course of the season.
Yeah, this Florida has improved like crazy since last season. And
Yeah,
honestly,
and
if
even the
you're a
start of this
Florida
season.
fan or yeah, well, if you're a Florida fan or just invested in the franchise at all, you should be proud of your boys. They're doing pretty damn well.
And they even got a better color scheme.
They did you change your colors and all of a sudden you're a fucking juggernaut.
Sup-
What is this, JoJo's? Uh, so
Surprisingly, they stopped playing like their roster belongs on the dollar menu when they get off the McDonald's colors.
yeah, no kidding. We went from fast food to Miami Vice, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we
Yeah.
can be proud to wear these jerseys. Like, yeah, they look good. Pink power, motherfuckers.
Anyway, let's transition over to the APAC bracket.
I was gonna say, speaking of pink power, but
Speaking of
yeah,
pink power,
yeah.
but
Speaking
Hangzhou's
of
in the
pink
second
power,
match. London Spitfire goes up against the Chengdu Hunters, and Chengdu picks up a 3-0 victory, continuing their recent winning ways. Seoul Dynasty goes up against the Hangzhou Spark, and the Spark come out ahead 3-2. NYXL takes on the Guangzhou Charge and manages to claw out a pretty competitive 3-2 victory before getting shit stomped by the Dragons 3-0. That was such a reversal in terms of like when they beat Guangzhou. I'm like, oh, we could have a real game going. Oh, never mind.
well, and this was the match where, when we were making our predictions, we said that the banner match was going to be whoever was the victor of the New York versus Guangzhou, them versus Shanghai. We called it like, that's going to be the match to watch. And it wasn't. New York versus Guangzhou was the match to watch. Seoul versus Hangzhou was
Mm-hmm.
the match to watch. New York versus Shanghai was 3 Overwatch.
Yes, in the most brutal fashion, and it's once again just the NYXL, like, they either seem to have their game together or they really don't.
It's like season 1 Valiant. You never knew which team was going to show up.
Yeah, and I think like the thing with the NYXL is they have some understanding of the meta. They don't get it as much as I would expect them to from the versions of them we've seen in the past, but they have such ridiculous fragging power on the roster that unless you can even things out there and then and outplay them strategically, you'll probably lose. But if you can do either of those things, well, it doesn't look great for NYXL.
Yeah, NYXL is a roster full of unholy terrors. The thing is, that'll only get you so far.
Yeah, and I will say Fisher had an interesting analysis of them that I kind of agree, where he said the problem is kind of that you have Haksal and Jonak on the same team, which sounds counterintuitive because, they're terrifying and they'll fuck your shit right up. But here's the thing, both of them have, over the course of their careers, been playing on teams whose strategies revolve largely around enabling them to play aggro and get the ridiculous amount of value that they can out of their play style. And so, the resources now are kind of split two different ways, which enables neither to the extent that they are kind of used to.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
And I
it
mean,
was
Jonak was our season 1 MVP.
yeah, it was a very interesting take, and I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, division of resources. Either which way, that the 0-3 loss to Shanghai was not what we expected.
Yes. Anyway, next up, we have the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Chengdu Hunters, and the Spark pick up the win 3-1, advancing to the finals against the Shanghai Dragons, where the Shanghai Dragons clobber them 4-0.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit in the bracketing for the Summer Showdown, but for the NA bracketing for the Summer Showdown, and
Mhm.
remarking how weird it was that like the number 4 seed was the Vancouver Titans and stuff like that. Like there's
Yeah,
some teams, because of their schedule for just the 3 weeks preceding the cup, having a different seed than you would expect.
yeah.
And that's how we wound up with, I believe it was New York and Guangzhou seated fairly low in APAC,
Mhm.
and then Hangzhou and Chengdu seeded much higher than expected. And, Shanghai being the number 1 seed, sky blue, water wet. But that's how we wound up with matches like this, where it's competitive in the lower brackets. And then when you get to the upper bracket, it's just a done deal.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, Shanghai has very much sort of adopted a similar, I want to say, structure to the San Francisco Shock, where you have really, really good coaching in the form of Moon, who, from his time in the Valiant, and then prior to that, LW Red, Ardeont, Mighty AOD. Like, he's a very experienced coach, and I think, like, working with this all Korean roster and sort of he's definitely showing off a lot more of his skill in with the Shanghai Dragons than he did when he was with the LA Valiant. Like, they look incredible in terms of their coordination and their knowledge of, like, how to play these different metagames. But he also has Dong Su, who was his assistant coach on the LA Valiant. He has Jay Feel, who was a coach for London Spitfire in season 1, and also Kongdu Panthera slash Cloud9 Kongdu, which is kind of where we got Fisher, Rascal, Birdring, Void, where they kind of came into that original London roster. The point I'm making here is he's got a very, very good coaching staff with a lot of experience underneath him, and they've done a great job of breaking down and understanding each metagame. And then you have this ridiculously talented roster where you have all-star quality players at pretty much every position, and some of them sitting on the bench as well. So it's like, you basically, you're going to play the game on a strategic level better than most, and your players are more significantly there's a big firepower advantage in their favor as well. So if you have the weight to throw around and you can do so well.
You've got all the best parts, and the coaching makes it a well-oiled machine.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's what has me looking forward to the finals, because I really need to see San Francisco versus Shanghai.
Yeah,
Like, I need to watch this hoedown, showdown, throwdown.
that's very much the interesting thing, because we haven't really seen these teams play each other, like, at all since the start of COVID, which is kind of where we've seen these teams establish themselves as the very, cream of the crop in their respective divisions. And, Moon has said he doesn't think teams that are dominant in NA would have as dominant showings in APAC, just because of the average level of play. And soon enough, we'll get to see, if he can put his money where his mouth is.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, point because let's be real, esports are taken more seriously in the APAC region, full stop.
Yeah.
On the other hand, San Francisco won last year handily the
Yes.
entire season. Like, he's got a good team. He's had a good team for a while, but you can't discount that. And you can't discount the fact that they are looking every bit as strong. I don't think San Francisco's any worse than they were last year. I think other
Mhm.
teams have stepped up to the plate to challenge them.
Yeah. And I will say, like, Shock definitely, like, they always have a little bit of irregularity towards the beginning of the season.
Oh, yeah.
Like season one, we don't even really need to talk about because it's a completely different team, basically.
Yeah.
Um, but season two, like when they started off in stage one, they definitely lost more games at that point. They finished 4-3 in stage one when their regular season score turned out to be 23-5.
Yeah.
So
It takes a minute to get it started, and then also they were integrating a lot of, like, Super had been on the bench in season 1 because he wasn't eligible to play,
yeah, he had come
for
in
one.
at stage four, I think, in
Yeah,
season one.
yeah, and he, if I recall correctly, like, he didn't turn 18 till the off season.
I don't think that's accurate. I remember him getting some play at the like ass end of season one, but
That could be.
like not.
It's been a
Yeah,
while, I don't remember. They
he wasn't
they
like yeah
were they were not on my radar as much as other teams during season 1. I only
yeah
had 3 teams I cared about in season 1 instead of, like, 6 or 7 that I'm up to now out of 20.
yeah
Yay! So yeah, Countdown Cup, bonkers,
yeah.
lot of fun to watch. Still dying that the Valiant picked the Outlaws. Come on, guys, get along, you jerks.
I enjoyed the savageness of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But also, as a fan of both, I'm dying Squirtle. So let's talk about last week's results because
Yeah.
we are not doing the 2 week break between tournaments. We had last week, we have this coming week, and then we're on a break for a month and some change until shit happens. Well, I know we're on a break for a bit. We have the tournament. Then we're on another break because the top 2 teams from out of the tournament are going to fly to the APAC region, get their visas figured out, quarantine, etc., and then we'll have the finals there. So
Yes.
it's going to be intermittent from here on in.
Yeah.
But
It's
before we
definitely
get there,
gonna be a bit up and down.
it's going to be wild. But for now, we're talking about the week 28 results. And as a reminder, the hero pool for this past weekend and this coming weekend is Genji, Tracer, Zarya, Brigitte, which is basically fuck your Genji meta, let's go.
Yeah, pretty much. First off, we have the London Spitfire take on the Seoul Dynasty. Seoul picks up the 3-0 win. That was the only game played that day. Then we
Which was
have
wild to
it was
me.
weird. It was weird. Like I watched it and I'm like, oh yeah, that's huh.
We have an APAC game on a weeknight, which is just in itself is bizarre. Usually they don't do that.
hmm Yeah.
Friday matches continue to throw me, but we had some
Mhm.
good Friday matches in this week.
Yeah, we had the Florida Mayhem take on the Vancouver Titans and slap them down 3-1. And then LA Gladiators versus Dallas Fuel continues kind of the trend of these matchups over the course of this season with a 3-0 victory for the Gladiators. NYXL, well, so brief disclaimer about the next day of APAC matches. Yes, we are aware of the situation with Hex and everything. Um, for those
For
of you
those of
who,
you
yeah,
For those of you who have not been following this or were not aware or just don't watch APAC for some reason, and if you don't, why wouldn't you watch APAC? It's amazing. Hex was one of our casters for this evening. The other one was supposed to be Jaws, but evidently he experienced some last minute technical difficulties, and I believe it was Achilleos who subbed in for him.
yes, and
So, and
we're
Wolf was unable to substitute because he's also in Korea. He's usually Achilleos' partner
mm,
in casting. he is currently coming back to the United States and in visa hell because, laws were changed and things happen. And so he had to come back here to renew his visa. And he may or may not be able to be involved in casting for the rest of the season. We don't know. The
Yeah.
point is, the sub had already been called in. I don't know if there was another one. And Hex was, he was not all there.
Yeah.
There,
So Hex,
yeah.
very obviously, his eyes were kind of glassy, his words were slurred, the filter was completely off, there was a bit of
Oh, God.
profanity. There were like 4 Reddit posts that basically amounted to, is Hex drunk?
A lot of people in chat were asking if he was high and calling him High Hex and then saying, "Quit calling attention to it, he'll get fired." And I'm like, I hope not, but also,
You could not
buddy, are
draw more.
you
Yeah,
okay?
you could not draw more attention to it than than this is already than it already was by itself.
The
And
point that stood out for me, and this
yeah,
is I've had to do sponsor reads for other platforms for other things I've been on before, where it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, no, this is a big deal. If you flub your sponsor read, sponsors get mad, and I have seen sponsors drop for flubbed sponsor reads. So, as everyone knows, the player of the match is sponsored usually by Xfinity. And at one point, Hex did the player of the match is so and so. I don't know who it's sponsored by, nor do I care. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, that's not
yeah,
good.
and
Oh,
yeah,
God.
as people who have been in that position in some capacity or another, like that's one of those moments where you're just like, oh no. Um,
It was bad. And he commented later. He did a twit longer explaining the situation, so this is public information.
yes.
He said that he's suffers from insomnia, that he's been really stressed, and I mean quarantine is fucking with everyone. So, yeah, no, we definitely get that. And that he had attempted to take sleeping pills the night before so he could get enough sleep during the day so he could be good for the broadcast, and that they affected him adversely and hit him right before the broadcast, and that he really doesn't remember most of it. He did say
Mhm.
later that he spoke with talent for the league, essentially, I would assume his managers, and they gave him some time off. And supposedly he is going to be back this coming weekend for week 29 during doing the daytime matches.
Mhm.
And here's where I kind of run into my issues. Like, I saw part of one of these matches. I did not go back and rewatch Shanghai versus London. And part of me wants to because they fielded Geggery the entire time, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
and
And the
it's
other part of me can't stand it. And
yeah,
as much as I appreciate the explanation and as much sympathy as I have for someone who has chronic issues being able to sleep and who is having trouble with quarantine, as we all are, like, I'd be going insane without my roommate and my cat, let's be real. And
yeah,
I don't think he has either of those things. I get it. At no point did he issue an apology, which is a
yeah.
problem.
It is, and it's one of those things that I'm kind of 2 minds about, just because one, he should, but as someone who like, ha- so it's something I don't feel bad talking about. It's not something I tend to advertise, but I also don't make a secret of it. I have very severe anxiety and depression issues, and they're usually fairly under control through a combination of therapy and medication, but there are times where they get the better of me. And I had one of those things recently where I was, coaching a scrim for my team, and I kid you not, I don't remember much of that scrim. That's like 3 solid hours. I just don't remember, and I was stone cold sober. And I apologized up and down, like, to everyone, because I felt really bad for like letting them down and all that. But it's also one of those things. If someone told me you need to apologize, it would, like, my gut reaction would be, "Fuck you." I didn't do this because I wanted to. My brain is in open fucking rebellion. So it's one of those things where I do agree an apology is warranted, having been in that position and, you know, felt awful about it and everything. Like, my own handling of a very similar thing. But at the same time, like, I'm very sympathetic for him as well.
I mean, yeah, it's the same. I'm of two minds, and
Yeah.
I because you also kind of got to step back and go, he's also a white guy in a prominent position in esports. Had this been a woman or a person of color, they would be getting
Oh,
raked over the coals. They wouldn't be getting
this is true.
they wouldn't be getting memed on, or the memes would be unbelievably cruel. Like
Yeah.
there's there is a double standard at play in esports. There always has been, and we really need to
Oh
work
yeah.
on that. So the fact that yes, this is a lot of this was out of his control. There are problems. Like yes, I completely understand what he's going through, but the fact that he has not issued an apology, like I think he mentioned in his tweet longer that he apologized to sponsors and his coworkers. And I'm like, that's great, but you did this on a public platform, an extremely public platform. And to that end, you can explain the circumstances, but it's also worth it just to say, hey, yeah, like this is what happened. I'm sorry for what I said. I don't remember saying it, but I'm sorry for what I said.
Yeah.
Like
And that's
there's a point where as a public persona, you just got to pony up and do it.
yeah. No, I completely agree that it is warranted, but it's one of those things where like I can't like being in that position as well, I can't bring myself to like be too harsh about it just because I have absolutely needed the sympathy of others in a similar position. So it's like I can't bring myself to be like too harsh, even though I completely agree that like this is a public forum and like I'm sure that if this was like your own stream and you were just kind of bantering and all of that or whatever, like whatever, but when you're on the official broadcast and you're talking some real shit, even if you don't remember saying it, you should
Yeah.
say sorry to those guys.
Yeah, he really went after London. It
Yeah.
was really bad. Just from the little bit that I watched, I have been informed that I did not at that point it was 3 a.m. and I was like, all right, I need to not. I
Mm.
need to actually sleep tonight. But there I was informed that it got pretty bad. So yeah, that's to my understanding, the gameplay of these is very much worth watching, which again, Shanghai fielded Geggery for the first time in forever, and she played the full match. Like, that is something.
Yeah.
But maybe commentary on another stream. I think Leg Day was doing commentary on his stream, so that was an
Yeah.
option.
If you're like riffing on your own stream and like even if so just because so you, if hypothetically he was in a consciously altered state of mind, say he was hammered on his own stream and saying these things, I wouldn't give a shit because it's his own
Yeah.
stream and like in that capacity you're acting as, you know, you may be affiliated but you're acting as a fan and speaking as one in that case. Maybe one who's, you know, sort of a higher tier than most people, but at the same time, you know, it's a very different thing to being on the official broadcast.
Yeah. And it's not like he got drunk on purpose. Like this was something going wrong with body chemistry. And like, I get it. I get that you
Hmm.
have adverse effects to things that happen and you cannot always plan for that.
Yeah.
My biggest issue is that I don't think there was anyone awake in terms of production hierarchy that would have been able to make the decision to either pull him from stream or attempt to find another substitute or something.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like whoever would have been able to make decisions to do damage mitigation here
Yeah.
just wasn't awake because it was 1 in the fucking morning. Because I honestly think that in terms of just ease for everyone,
Yeah.
we would have been better off with an Achilleos solo cast. And it's not fair to him, but it would have been easier on him to do a solo cast than to try to have to bring someone who mentally was 1 foot out the door already
Yeah.
back on task.
Yeah. Yeah. Um
It's
I will say it very much reminded me of and this is one of my you know patented seemingly irrelevant references. But in
That's
2000,
this whole
yeah,
podcast, seemingly irrelevant
in
references.
2007, there's a UFC fighter, Chuck Liddell, who was at the time the light heavyweight champion, and he was doing an interview on, like, I think it was like Good Morning Texas or something. To, um, and he was in the
I love
exact
it.
same state where he was very drowsy, slurring his words, and actually fell asleep a couple of times, like during the interview. And you can find all of this on YouTube.
Oh no.
Um, and basically, everyone was like, "Is Chuck Liddell okay?" And so the thing was, he was getting over a case of pneumonia and had
Oh God.
taken sleeping pills the night before the interview. And so he goes onto TV, and again, just look up Chuck Liddell. This dude looks like a guy who fights for a living. And then you just see him like slumped all the way down in his chair, just going like, yeah, it was a great movie. Mm. And
The moral of the story here, kids, is that sleeping pills can and will fuck you up, and to
they
be very
really
careful
can.
anytime you take a sleep aid, even if it's over the counter.
They really, really can.
I think I did, well, I think I had after baby's first panic attack, which was not fun, I wound up with, I think they're just like anti-anxiety
Mm.
education. Wow, fuck, I'm tired.
Medication.
Education, woo!
Medication.
Quarantine fucks with everyone.
Yeah.
Essentially, I took one, and these were prescribed, and I was out for the rest of the night. And I was just like, oh, I hate this. Thank
Mhm.
God I didn't take it before work. So,
Yeah.
yeah, things will mess you up. You don't always know what the outcome is going to be. You can't always guess the results. And so, my long and short of it is I can have all the sympathy in the world for the guy, and I do because it's a shit situation. And I can also think that he needs to apologize for his conduct on air.
Yeah.
Like, these are two different things. I can hold both views. They do not contrast each other.
Oh,
I also
100%.
think that Achilles was the MVP of the night,
Oh my
showing up as a
god, yeah.
last minute sub and then carrying the broadcast. Like, dude, somebody send him like a Harry and David gift basket or something. Just he fucking deserves it. He pulled it out.
He was absolutely um he was absolutely like killing it as hard as he can in those circumstances.
Yeah. It's it's hard to host with one other person when that person is unable to pull their end of the way. I've hosted with other people who were just not good hosts. And that's, if you've watched all my hosting stuff, you can pick out where they are. And let's be real, those are the hosts that I am not friends with outside of the outlets. So,
God, I
yes.
know that feeling. The
Oh
the
boy, oh boy, oh boy. I
the
had
thing
someone call me an idiot on air once and I iced him out. So, yikes.
oh, the I
It's very difficult to host with someone who is not able to hold up their end of the bargain, whether they are unwilling, unable, uneducated. Again, I hosted with some winners. Um, Yeah, and Hex was not able to perform up to standards, and Achilleos, in response, pulled it the fuck out.
he
Like,
really did. He
well
really
done.
did.
So
Um
yeah, long story short, these two APAC matches are a little hard to watch. Little
I don't think we mentioned the scores yet, but
we haven't.
NYXL versus Seoul was a 3-0 in favor of Seoul. Shanghai versus London was a 3-0 in favor of Shanghai. And that brings us back over to NA.
Yep.
Atlanta Reign took on the Paris Eternal, and this was a meme-a-palooza in terms of
Oh my god.
the crap Atlanta pulled, but Paris gets the 3-2 victory. Um,
Atlanta was at the Kraft macaroni and cheese factory, providing all of the cheese.
we this was a like I'm trying to think of an appropriate thing, but this is like
It was a clown fiesta, but it was a
We
lot of fun.
this is a melting pot's daily allotment of cheese.
It was it was so much. It was so much. It was basically the Kraft Factory. That's what it was.
Yeah,
It was all of Wisconsin,
we are at Tillamook Farms making cheddar.
pretty much.
Um, so up next, Vancouver versus Dallas. Dallas, who had never actually taken a map off of Vancouver prior to this, gets a 3-0 victory over Vancouver. With the
Dallas
margin
needed something.
for sure. And they do look to be improving. I don't think we'll get any sort of miracle run at the end here, but they look to be getting steadier on their feet as the match progressed. Um, Moving along, we have the Boston Uprising versus the LA Gladiators. Predictably, Gladiators sweep 3-0.
Beating Boston for the first time in franchise history.
Yes, we have another franchise first.
I'll take it.
Then we have the San Francisco Shock versus the Philadelphia Fusion, which you have written as the Philadelphia.
God damn it, I
Note.
keep doing that. Whoops.
Yeah.
You keep me from my charming errors.
Fusion gets the 3-0 victory over the Shock and
Which is
secures the
evidently
number
not
1 seed.
which is evidently the Shock has not been swept since like stage 1, season 2 or something insane.
Yeah.
So it's been a long ass time since San Francisco has been on the wrong side of 3 Overwatch. But here we are.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't like Gladiators losing to Boston a month and some change ago. It was, these were two top teams, but on this, you look at this Saturday, this was supposed to be the banner match. This
It
was
was.
supposed to be the throwdown for the day. And instead, the throwdown for the day was Atlanta versus Paris, with everyone honking their noses at each other.
Yeah, and like Fusion versus Shock was interesting because it seemed like Shock just wasn't really necessarily sure of what they were doing for once. And the Fusion just picked up the tempo. And like, so in Overwatch, you'll hear people very frequently, especially if you like are hearing people at the pro level, you'll just hear people shout like, press W, come on. And that's because in Overwatch, being the more aggressive team and playing at as high of a tempo as you can without hard feeding tends to be a very direct path to success. And usually the Shock outpaces everyone else. That didn't happen this time. Fusion was able to set the tempo of the match and just run with it.
Yeah. I would say the exception to this rule, and they were the solid exception to this rule for 2 seasons, and now this season it's like, maybe, is New York. New York is one of the few teams that can top from the bottom, as it were.
Power bottom!
New York is the power bottom of the Overwatch League.
That's the title. That's the fucking title.
Oh God, no! Why did I do that? I still think that that's something that SEO is going to hate.
Yes.
We've got like
come on.
5 different prospective titles for this episode, but goddamn. Yeah, but New York is one of the few teams where the other team can set the tempo all they want. New York can handle just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's out of character this season for them not to be able to do that. But for the first 2 seasons, it was the other teams can play however they want. New York will handle it and come back swinging.
New York was very much... They had a very Floyd Mayweather-y counter-punching approach to Overwatch, which doesn't really work in most cases, but they were so coordinated that they were able to make it work.
Past tense, because we're missing some of that now. But yeah
they definitely play messier.
This was rough to watch for San Francisco, especially after the Countdown Cup.
Speaking of rough to watch, Seoul Dynasty versus London, again. 3-0 for Seoul, again.
I feel like this is And then if you look at this coming weekend, we also have Seoul Dynasty versus the London Spitfire. That's 3 times in 2 weeks.
Can I just say that I think the London Spitfire are, especially like in a lot of ways, but this season especially, they are the Tony Hawk of the Overwatch League, but it's the Tony Hawk of 2020, where it's Tony Hawk's existential nightmare. And the London Spitfire's existential nightmare has, like, even though they were the winners of the inaugural season, they absolutely were living that existential nightmare during season 1 of just beating the crap out of a lot of teams and then losing horrifically. And then you have season 2 where they just couldn't live up to that potential like at all and continued to be consistently inconsistent. And now 2020, it's just like, but why?
I mean, but looking at London's roster for 2020 is kind of like looking at Vancouver's roster for 2020. You can't, it's the same franchise, but you can't, it's like season 2 Shanghai and this season Shanghai versus season 1 Shanghai. You have a handful of holdovers, but for the most part, they're an entirely different team.
I
So
don't think
like
it's necessarily fair to compare London to Vancouver, though, just because there are more people on London's roster that I'm optimistic about.
this is also true. It's just the same idea of it's not the same roster as the ones that were winning.
Yeah, very
But yeah,
true, but it's the same. It's the same problem.
yeah. And London, because they had such a large chunk of time when we were redoing everything, trying to figure out how to keep Overwatch League going during a global pandemic, they missed a lot of weeks of play. And so this is having to make it up in the back end when everyone's figured out the meta and everyone knows what they're doing and they are just getting creamed left, right, and center. And it sucks
Yeah,
for them. It really
and
does.
I gotta say though, like their coaching staff as well is so bizarre to me. Well, because here's the thing. So their head coach is Agape. And Agape was their head coach for season 1 and a good chunk of season 2. So, you know, it's not bad. But then they fire him and he drops down and coaches a Korean contenders team called Blossom, who, yeah, they're okay.
That was a noise. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah.
they hire him back to be their head coach. And then under him, they hire Pavane. And if you're wondering where you've heard that name before, Pavane used to be the head coach for the NYXL
Oh my god.
and was also the head coach of Team South Korea in 2018.
So there's a
So,
pedigree here.
yeah,
London, which is it accurate to say that season 3 London is the season 1 Shanghai right now?
no, I would
Better
not
or
say
worse?
that. I Okay, well, you better or worse. Have they won games?
This is true. This is true.
You can't say do they clear the bar when the bar is not on the
When
floor,
the
it's
bar is
in the floor.
subterranean.
Yeah, it's not on the floor, it's in the fucking floor. Like, yeah,
Okay,
they
that
have,
is a but okay. All right. Are they season 1 mayhem?
maybe, maybe. I turned into
Mhm.
Beetlejuice there for a second, but maybe.
They do the show like 8 times a week. Anyway,
Yeah,
so and Spitfire is playing against Seoul again this coming weekend, and the return of 3 Overwatch because that's really what we're looking at. And
I I will
thank
say
God
what's
they changed it from first to 3, so it's not just 4-0, 4-0, 4-0, 4-0.
what's really funny to me too is how like inbred these coaching staffs are. Because here's the thing. The head coach of the Seoul Dynasty is Changun, who was the head coach for London. in season 1 most of season 2.
Oh my god.
And working under him as their strategic coach is Wizard Hyung, who was an assistant coach for Pavane on NYXL in season 1.
Good coaching staff. It's coaching hot potato.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
That's amazing. All
It's
right,
it's
well,
funny to me. Um,
moving on to the last few the last few NA matches, including the one that I was literally screaming at the TV for.
yeah,
Sunday was nuts, y'all.
San Francisco Shock versus Toronto Defiant. San Francisco slaps Toronto 3-0. Florida Mayhem takes on the Valiant, and the Valiant win 3-2.
I startled my roommate, scared the hell out of the cat, did some literal screaming at the TV, which I usually don't for Overwatch matches anymore. Just damn. I was expecting this to be a day of 3 Overwatch and then we reverse sweep for like the third time in franchise history or something like that. Valiant does not do reverse sweeps very well. We are not
Yeah,
Houston. We are not season 1 Boston.
I can
We don't have this shit figured out.
I can
But
just
we did it.
I can just imagine being in your apartment at that moment. It must have been like the opening chorus of like the Biggie Smalls song "Come On," where it's just "Come on, motherfuckers, come on!" like over and over again.
Oh no, the come on, come on, come on, come on, come on is really quiet, and then the victory is the yes.
So it was more the rebel pilot in Rogue One, like crashing into the shield gate.
A little bit. Just the screaming comes with the actual victory. Where I save my in-match screaming for I was gonna say the Blizzard Arena, but not anymore.
Yeah,
Uh for homestands, for when I'm actually there. I
yeah,
try to be a relatively considerate neighbor. The walls are thin in my complex and we're all stuck at home, so you do the best you can,
it's
but
true.
sometimes your team reverse sweeps a team that's several spots above them that definitely should have won this match, and you just scream your face off for a little bit. It's
Um,
fine. Everything's fine.
Speaking of teams beating teams that should have won the match, Vancouver
Yeah.
Titans 3-1 against Atlanta Reign.
Yeah, Vancouver Titans are lactose intolerant and not putting up with any of that shit.
Nah, and Atlanta continues to be the little engine that maybe could but can't right now. Like
The little engine that tried.
the little
It's
engine that
yellow and the wheels are stars. You
the
try.
little the little engine that really gave it their best.
The attempt was made, engine.
That sounds like something from Hitchhiker's Guide. That sounds like a prototype for the infinite improbability drive.
A little bit, yeah. The attempt was made, engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What I really appreciate, though, is that Vancouver Titans, one, did their homework watching Atlanta pull this bullshit on Paris and
Yeah.
watching Paris nearly fall to it. And two, was able to take that to adapt it into a meta where the meta that they'd been playing for the past few weeks was null and void because of hero pools, and turn it around and just if I'm remembering this correctly, we had some close maps and some maps that were not even in the neighborhood of close.
Yeah, it Overwatch League was kind of on crack this week.
I had so much fun. Sunday was great. Saturday was a little difficult. Sunday was great.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my god, I was already on a high from the Valiant match, and then just watching the Titans and Atlanta pull their cheese and Titans pull it out was just like, what? What is what? What? The Titans beat who? So we keep talking about Atlanta Reign being this middle of the pack gatekeeper, and I'm not sure they can call themselves that anymore.
Yeah, it's
They're in flux.
well the thing is that's where the Atlanta Reign have kind of been all season. It's just never quite living up to their potential. And
I would say that they've been there since the inception of the team.
well, the thing is season 2 I didn't think that they were gonna set the world on fire. like a sixth place finish made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'd say like season 2 Atlanta Reign, exactly what I expected, because they have a lot of players who are very, very good and have a lot of genuinely impressive upside. However, they also had some players who I don't think are quite like at the Overwatch League like top tier level, and so they can't quite make it. And the other thing is, I don't really think Sephi is an amazing head coach.
Eh.
Well,
I
here's
mean, I don't really have the eye for coaching that you do, so I can't really say one way or another.
well basically the reason I say this is because one, Atlanta Reign has consistently been like a fifth to eighth team. And so the reason he was kind of famous and the reason people were excited to see him and a bunch of former players from the team he used to coach get into the Overwatch League is they used to be part of a team called Selfless Gaming. And Selfless was known for this hyper aggro, no respect style, which you would expect considering they had Defran and Sinatra as a DPS line.
Yeah.
But they would they would, go into these NA tournaments and take first place, first place, first place, first place. And then Rogue comes and they get second. And then Envious comes and they get second. And then, like, basically, and then, like, Immortals would come and they'd get second. So it was always like they could beat everyone except the really good guys. And the really good guys would beat them pretty consistently. Like, it could be close sometimes. It could be close, but it always went a certain way. And
That's the pedigree they carry with them, evidently.
yeah, and that's the reason I bring it up, is we've never seen Sephi deliver a team that hasn't been B plus.
Like, I think the biggest upset we've seen from them was the season 2 finals tournament where they beat the San Francisco Shock and the C9 heard around the world. And then after that, just Shock ran it back through the losers bracket and ran
Yeah,
train
like I don't think they're a
and
bad
continued on.
team, or
No.
that Sephi is a bad head coach, but he's never, in anything I've seen, really been able to deliver, to really bring his team all the way to the big win.
Well, you need someone in the middle of the curve.
It's true, but it is a genuine shame considering the ridiculous level of talent that this roster has. Because like guys who I was hyped as hell to see get into the Overwatch League, like just this season alone, you've got Gator and Hawk, who are who were with Atlanta Academy the most aggressive, no fucks given tank line that was present. You've got Pokebo, who can also be a beast on the main tank. In terms of DPS, you've got Edison, Sharp, Erster, and Saucy, all of whom are bad motherfuckers. You've got great supports as well. And so it's just this team has so much talent and upside. And the fact that they haven't been able to like really deliver on that potential yet is like, I think, a sign that, maybe something needs to change if you want to round that corner. No guarantees, of course, but like
Well,
this has been a consistent pattern.
we talked about it earlier. You can have all the best parts, but it's the coaching that makes it a well-oiled machine. San Francisco has both, Shanghai has both, Atlanta has one. One will
Yeah.
only get you so far.
Yeah, and that's one of the other like things that I don't think that it's that having good coaching or good players will get you necessarily all the way. Just because there are some times where players aren't basically they aren't just a good fit together for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think something needs to change at this point.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how the franchise owners see it, and honestly, how the ending tournament's going to shake out. Because I feel like performance in the ending tournament, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion,
Yeah,
but I do think we know who we're going to be seeing in the finals already. I think we're looking at San Francisco and Shanghai, obviously.
yeah,
And then from APAC, it's a toss up between Guangzhou and New York, depending on whether or not New York shows up that day. And here, I'd say it's a toss up between Philly and Paris.
yeah.
Mayhem, maybe, if they really go
I
for it.
will say
But honestly, probably Philly or Paris.
Chengdu and Hangzhou also do have kind of potential for a dark horse run. Like they've both been looking better recently. Chengdu, especially, I think, kind of has the potential to maybe surprise some people in the playoffs, especially with the new coaching staff making the difference that they're making. But we'll see.
Yeah, this is true, but again, one of those spots is most likely cemented by Shanghai.
Oh, absolutely.
And the two teams that have been nipping at Shanghai's heels consistently this entire season will not be so easily overthrown by Chengdu.
Well, New York might.
This is true, but
New
then you
York
got to
might.
get through Guangzhou,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's gonna take some doing.
Yes. Yes, it will.
Anyway, so that's been the past 2 weeks in a very large nutshell, in a coconut shell,
Yes.
uh, larger nutshell than usual.
Consider the coconut Overwatch League.
You just got two halves of a coconut and you're
Yeah.
banging them together.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what the ending tournament's going to be like. You've got two halves of a league and you're banging them together.
Basically.
Terrible British accent. Anyway, we spoke earlier about how important sponsor reads are, so it's only fair that, we do ours. And as always, this off to a great start. Here we go. This podcast, as always, is sponsored by Fred He Bakes. Breads and spreads by Fred. Fred has started doing new cookies. We talked about them a little bit last time we recorded, but now they have been baked and sent out and they look amazing. They are called Big Chip Buddies. They're like 4 or 5 inches in diameter. These cookies are huge. They are giant chocolate cookies they are giant chocolate chip cookies that also have nuts in. They are big, soft cookies. They look amazing. I'm putting an order in myself because I need them in my life and I really need to see what a 5 inch cookie just looks like. And of course, Fred is doing the staple, the brown sugar buddies, and he is doing the maple brown sugar buddies as well, which are A plus, amazing, highly recommended. Dunk them in your coffee, tea, hot chocolate, etc. if you are someplace where a warm beverage is warranted. If you are someplace that's in the middle of a heat wave, like we are out here, make ice cream sandwiches out of them because they are good, soft cookies that taste a little bit like spice cookies and a little bit like molasses cookies and a little bit like ginger snap and a whole lot like the best damn cookie you've ever had. They're soft. They're great for ice cream sandwiches because they won't break and then squish the ice cream everywhere. And you can get a good bite with a good ratio of ice cream to cookie, which is what you want in an ice cream sandwich. It's a sandwich. You shouldn't have to eat it with a spoon. So, of course, all of these cookies are fresh, never frozen. He makes every batch fresh. He makes them in small batches to preserve those incredible flavors, and you cannot find these cookies in store. What you need to do if you want these cookies is to go to fredhebakes.com. That's 3 words, fredhebakes.com, and use coupon code on the point for 20% off your entire order. Fred He Bakes. Treat yourself. You deserve it.
Oh god, I really do. It's so fucking hot.
It is. It is. And you get the maple cookies and then you get like the really good French vanilla ice cream. You get like the Tillamook or something. Or if you're one of those people, you get like the Butterbrickle or the Turtle ice cream that's got the caramel and the pecans in it. Yeah. Yeah. Ice cream sandwich recipes with Katie and CJ.
Yeah, let's move on.
Is it cruel to be talking about that right now because it's so hot? Okay. All right. All right. On to news. And this is one of the few times where I've put an actual link in our notes instead of typing something out because I felt like this was important enough to read verbatim. The big thing is the roster construction rules for the 2021 Overwatch League season were posted about a week ago. But the thing is, nestled in there is the updates to the roster construction rules for the 2020 playoffs. And I'm just going to read this paragraph verbatim because I think it is important. As we continue to plan for the 2020 postseason, we are making a change to roster rules for this season to ensure teams can continue to compete as potential operational issues arise. From now until the end of the 2020 Overwatch League season, if a team has a player retire, become unavailable for play due to COVID-19, or elect not to travel, that team may sign a free agent to replace that player. Any such replacement signing must expire at the end of the 2020 season, and those players will become free agents for the 2021 season. Due to visa timelines and safety planning, free agents must meet one of the following criteria to compete in playoffs under this provision. The free agent must have citizenship for a country in Asia, or the free agent must have an existing visa to travel to countries in Asia.
Which,
So, with that in mind,
that's a very realistic expectation to put in place.
yeah, because you never know what's going to happen with coronavirus. You never know what's going to happen with traveling. And fuck, I wouldn't feel safe to travel. I'm not getting on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
So, recycled air in a tube for hours? No, thank you. But with that in mind, these rules dropped, I want to say like Wednesday or Thursday of last week. And I was looking at that and going, something's going to happen. Now that these rules have dropped, we're going to get something big. Very next day, early in the morning, Decay signed to the Washington Justice for the rest of the season under
Yeah,
these rules.
which on the one hand, Decay is so good that he should just be on a team right now and all that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the other thing is the reasons he gave for leaving Dallas was the lack of drive and organizational, like, basically the team wasn't playing up to his standard and wasn't working hard enough or smart enough to close that gap, right?
He
So
was
you
tired of doing the Decay deadlift.
yes. But the point that I'm trying to make here is what team
Washington?
has been as big of a tire fire these past two seasons in terms of high profile departure and drama?
Boston?
Well, I wouldn't I
You
wouldn't
left that door open. I had to waltz through it. I had to do the Cusco. Boom, baby. Yeah.
I don't even agree with that because Boston like has Boston has obviously had some big names come and go, but they haven't had their entire back end like fired during a season twice.
This is true. You asked for a tire fire. you that's
Yeah.
you,
The point that I'm making is Decay, I'm not sure you're gonna get what you want here.
I'm 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 seeing two things here. One, I'm seeing Washington was either the team that moved the fastest or the only team that went after Decay under these new rules. Two, it's entirely possible that the reasons Decay gave for leaving Dallas are the public friendly reasons, and that there might be other reasons we don't know about.
Entirely possible. However, I have counterpoints to make.
Go for it.
First off, who is the current main tank of the Washington Justice?
I don't trust my brain to give the right answer tonight.
The answer is Roar. And who prior to Decay going to Dallas has Decay played with for most of his career?
Roar.
Ding ding ding. And on top of that, like, the other thing worth considering is the fact that a bunch of the other people on there are former Runaway, and Kongdu Panthera, which is where Roar and Decay were at the time where they were playing in Contenders. They've interacted a bunch. So it could very well be, hey, I've got a bunch of buddies on this team.
Yeah, and this is not a permanent contract. This is a just until the end of the season. So it's entirely possible that this is I'm going to play with them. I'll get to play for one, which is a good thing to have. You don't want 6 months of unemployment on your resume, regardless of how
Yeah.
good you are. So he gets to play, and then if it doesn't work out, if he encounters the same or similar organizational issues, the contract's over at the end of the season anyway. He becomes a free agent for 2021, and if Justice comes after him again, he can either say, oh yeah, that worked out really well, I'd like to sign a full contract, or see, I'm getting scouted by San Francisco, and
Yeah.
like, he's going to have options, but for now, he gets to play even though he was released after the signing window had closed because another window opened.
Yeah, pretty much. Decay is going to be like, everyone in the league is going to be just trying to like lure him over with a contract. Like that's just a thing. But the point that I'm making is I think he's over here because, buddies and, maybe Justice made a good offer because they do have a lot of money in that org.
Yep.
Despite the shit show that the team itself has been. But I don't think he's necessarily leaving the things that frustrated him behind.
True, but he also only is going to deal with them for another like month and a half.
I mean, if
And
he
he
was
still gets
willing
to play.
if he was willing to put up with them for a month and a half, he probably could have stayed on Dallas when it was clear that Arrow was leaving.
Yeah, I would argue that
I like
sometimes, same shit, different day is a little different when you're doing it with your friends.
well,
So
true,
it
but he
might
and
just be
Doha were
like,
mad close, so it's not like he didn't have friends on Dallas as well. But this is speculation. We'll see how it goes.
yeah.
I'm just saying, in my mind, it might not be the greener pastures that he might be hoping for.
Oh
However,
no, but also it's a temporary contract. So if it's not the greener pastures, he can be like, thanks for the month and a half. Thanks for the playtime. Good to see you guys again. Fuckity bye.
so long, and thanks for all the cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. um,
Goodbye so soon. And isn't it a crime? Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, instead of goodbye, we have a hello as Nero returns to Guangzhou Charge's active roster.
Yay!
Yeah,
Was he
so
in Visa Hell or that was something else?
Visa Hell.
He was in Visa Hell. Okay.
He's an American playing on a Chinese team that's currently operating out of Korea.
I love it. Honestly, he's probably safer than most of us right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the other big things is we have voting open for the MVP and All-Stars.
Yeah, I didn't list everyone that was available for All-Stars because there's like
A
100 people.
lot of motherfuckers, yeah.
There's many. But our candidates for MVP are Violet, Carpe, Eggsy, Void, Alarm, Yaki, Krong, Choihyobin, Fleta, and Eileen. And I'm not going to lie, when you log in and then you vote for someone, after you vote, they show you the top 3 people and then they show you where the person you placed vote for. And you can vote more than once. So
I
I
would
log
like
in.
to point out that
Yeah.
in the MVP voting, you spelled Krong's name Krog.
God damn it. So here's where this story is going. I get in there and I'm like, all right, well, who's our MVP? Who do I think? You don't hear a lot about the off tanks, but when they talk about off tanks and they talk about who's a really good Sigma, long story short, I voted for Krong. He was in last place when I voted 2 weeks ago, and he's still in last place.
Also,
And I'm dying quietly.
where the motherfucking main tanks at?
Yeah, honestly, right now, as of today, It's Fleta in the lead, followed by Carpe and Eggsy.
And they're
And
fucking
when
great.
I wrote this last week
But
and then had to update it for today, last week it was Carpe in the lead, or rather, last week it was Eggsy in the lead, followed by Alarm and Fleta. So your top three candidates are Fleta and Carpe and Eggsy, and they're all within like 2 to 3% of each other. Krong has 1% of the vote because there is no respect. Um, but we had yeah. We're looking like we're gonna have a DPS this season. I would love to see a support. I would love to see a tank MVP. I'm kind of dying that Choi isn't higher on this list, but I'm not in any capacity surprised that Fleta and Carpe are up there because they have been mainstays for a while.
I just I have a like, this throws my memory back to when I was, playing on a team, and one of my teammates was eternally salty about goats, despite the fact that he was probably better at Diva than any DPS he actually played. But and he still isn't great at that. But like he had this big rant of just like deadpan sarcasm, where the point that he tried to make was that Blizzard wasn't doing anything to fix the goats meta because they wanted to like market the main tank players instead of the DPS. And I'm just like, are you on crack?
the fucking poster girl for the league and the game itself is a DPS and a lesbian. Thank you, Blizzard. But
Also, the thing
it's
that I want to point out is when you talk about like season 2 and season 1 and all that, the names that stand out, like, yeah, you have people like Fisher, like Mono, like Bumper, like OG, but Carpe, Shadowburn, EQO, Pine, like the sort of rise and fall of the various DPS on Dallas who were really well regarded before that and not. You've got Prophet, you've got Jonak, you've got, after that, like
soon.
Twilight, Soon, uh, you've got all these other people. And I'm just like, how in
Sinatra.
the fuck does that make the slightest bit of sense? You ignorant fucking fool. Anyway, that man's in jail now. I'm not.
Well, that's a hell of a way to end a story about Overwatch player preferences.
I'm also not even kidding. He's in prison.
I've been watching The Good Place with my roommate. I've seen it all before. It's her first experience, and I just had a full like Jason Mendoza moment. Like, what? What?
I
So yeah,
I'm not
it's
I'm not kidding, and I know I will not say who it is or why.
oh no, nope. Some things you don't say publicly. But
Yes.
that Jesus Christ. Okay. And I mean Jeff, Dad Overwatch, has come out and said that they need to figure out new ways to incentivize, especially support players, because the play of the game, 80% of the time, it's DPS popping off. The
Mm-hmm.
other 20%, it's a Diva bomb. Um, so, yeah, as a support player, I feel that heavily.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't play support to be flashy. You play support because you're the mom friend. So, mm,
Yeah. It's a whole fucking to do.
there's always an imbalance between the people who can make the big flashy plays and the people who keep them the fuck alive. Anyway, I'm not surprised, especially given this year, especially given the metas this year, that we are looking at our top three candidates as all DPS players. I will laugh my ass off if Carpe comes in second because he's on Philly and that's what they do.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It really is, but I just it would be fitting, He does deserve MVP, but so does Fleta, and so does Eggsy. And god damn it, I will throw in for Alarm as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who deserve it.
And Krong, god damn it. Anyway, so MVP voting is open. All Stars voting is open. I am definitely going and voting for my favorite people in All Stars so I can have a jersey from someone I like, hopefully in good colors this year. Oh, Pacific got fucking shafted in last year's color scheme. That orange looks good on a lot of people, but not me. Or the yellow, the burnt sienna.
Oh, we getting fancy.
Well, it's yellow and it's other yellow. It was not a I was not fond of that color scheme. I loved the Atlantic color scheme, and then I didn't have anyone I cared about on the Atlantic teams. So it's like, well, if I'm going to buy a jersey, I want it to look good and I want it to have a name that I give a damn about, and nothing fit last year.
Oh,
So yeah, so voting is open for all stars. Vote for some Pacific boys. Vote for some LA people so I can have some LA people on my jersey. God damn it!
there's a lot of people in every division. Like the thing is, I don't think there's a single team that has someone who doesn't deserve some votes.
Oh, exactly. I mean, dude, I would buy a Shockwave jersey for
Yeah.
multiple stupid in joke reasons, but I would do it.
Oh yeah,
That man is wild.
he's a nut.
And I mean, we
Anyway,
do have to keep in mind that fully
yeah.
half the players on Vancouver are playing on stupid pings right now. I think at
Oh yeah.
least three of them have crazy pings.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, things to keep in mind when you look at Vancouver and go, wait, they beat Atlanta on ping? Damn. People have no tolerance for cheese, and I love it. Um, I want to say the last thing in news, and it's not on here, but it's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
And she made this public. This is public information.
Oh, I know what you're gonna get
Zoe
into.
is not going to be on the broadcast this weekend, and she may not be able to be on the desk for the rest of the season. Her father experienced some medical issues. She is going home to Switzerland to be with him, and evidently he lives in a small town that does not get the best of internet, and so she doesn't know if she will even be able to watch League, let alone be on the desk. And because of issues pertaining to coronavirus and visa issues, she was going to get married and, get her card that way, but unfortunately coronavirus made that impossible. And then the visa renewal process, it's the same thing that Wolf is running into, just coming from the other end. Laws have changed. She can't do it in the location where she needs to be. So basically, she might wind up a creek in terms of visa and in terms of internet. But she
And
has made the decision to go home and support her dad. And we fully support her in that decision and wish
goddamn
her
right.
and her father the best.
And like life hitting this ultra instinct combo on her was not done quite yet because her cats ate some flowers that got sent to her and got poisoning from eating lilies. And
Oh
so
no, I didn't
both
hear that.
yeah, and I haven't heard like what the end result is, but both of her kitties like had to go to hospital and
And
yeah,
they were
like
lilies.
lilies.
Oh God. For those of you who don't know, lilies are horrifyingly poisonous to pets. The leaves, the petals, the pollen, all of it. Like if your cat sticks its nose in a lily and comes out with pollen on its nose, you take it to the emergency vet right away. Like that is nothing to fuck with.
Yeah, and apparently the lilies got sent to her, and this happened.
Oh my God, that I did not hear about. Oh boy. So yeah, send your support to Soe if you are a praying person. Prayers, just we are with her and we support her as much as we possibly can because this is a difficult situation and the sun is slightly warm.
Yeah. It's so ridiculously like when it rains, it pours happening for this poor woman.
Yeah. So support her as best you can. She is updating her social media and letting people know how she is. So, tell her you love her.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at her like social media right now to see if there's any update on her fucking cats and that.
All right. Well, I did not realize the thing about her cats. Oh my god, that is very difficult as a pet owner. And yeah, if you own a pet, before you bring any plant into your house, do your research as to, is it poisonous? Is it going to affect your pet if they eat it? Like, Christmas is going to happen eventually. Poinsettias. Poinsettias are a thing. Do not let your cat eat poinsettias. And so it's always something worth knowing, and the lilies thing is not necessarily widely known even among a lot of pet owners.
Okay, the cats are all right. The cats are all right.
Good. 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 It's always good when the cats are okay.
Yes, seriously.
Yeah. So that is one good thing. Thank God. Still send her your support and love
Yes.
because we love her and we wish her the best. All right. Let us wander into predictions for what looks to be our last week of regular play before we go into the final countdown. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Our hero pool for this week, same as last week: Genji, Tracer, Zarya, Brigitte. So taking the entire meta and just burying it. Starting off, we have the Vancouver Titans versus the Boston Uprising.
Vancouver.
Vancouver. Just in the battle of blue teams, yeah, Vancouver very much has an edge here.
Blue
We then,
boys.
yeah, we then have the LA Gladiators versus the Florida Mayhem.
Florida.
Yeah, I want to say LA, but let's be real. Probably Florida. I
Yeah.
don't think Florida's going to want to lose to another LA team,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking. Moving to APAC, we have the Hangzhou Spark versus the Seoul Dynasty. I'm going to go Hangzhou, given their
As
recent
am I.
performance. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm in on that.
All right, the London Spitfire versus New York, the rivalry that was all of season 1 and then just didn't happen.
NY.
Yeah, New York. Like, even New York on a bad day is doing better than London consistently for the most
Yeah.
part. And it's rough to be a London fan, and it's rough to be London right now, but that's where we are. Washington Justice versus San Francisco Shock. The Shock.
San Fran.
Just like, I feel like after getting 3-0'd by Philly, they're not going to let another map by them.
Yeah. And then next we have the Dallas Fuel versus the Toronto Defiant.
Toronto.
Dallas.
Honestly, I think we're kind of at even footing here, just
Oh yeah.
given how both teams have been playing.
Yeah. No, like don't get me like the only thing that the thing that I think is the big difference maker in my mind is Toronto's playstyle has been super passive
This
these
is
past
true.
few weeks. And
This is true.
like I think Dallas, like while they're struggling and still, fixing a lot of things, they are more than good enough to take advantage of space if you give it to them. And Toronto has not been great about pressuring their opponents out.
True. But I also think this is going to hinge on Toronto's. This is what this usually hinges on for Toronto: individual levels of play. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people with a lot of pop off potential, and when they are on, they are on. And occasionally that makes up for some of those pacing deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. We'll see. Moving on. The Gladiators versus the Atlanta Reign. I'm going to go with Gladiators on this one.
Yeah, this is hard to say because they are both teams that have struggled a lot in terms of breaking into that top end. And I kind of want to go with Atlanta. And I'm
I
not
mean,
basing that off of anything. It's just that, like, I feel like Atlanta's average level of performance is a little higher, whereas Gladiators is either really good or not good at all.
it's kind of hard to read the room when everything is drenched in cheese.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are. And I do believe that the Gladiators have the ability to cheese just as hard as the Reign right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, looking at the standings, Valiant's in 8th, Reign is in ninth, Gladiators is in 10th. 11-9, 10-9, and 9-9, respectively.
Mhm.
So it's all very close here. But I do think the Gladiators can take it, depending on how they like their cheese. Because I'm not putting it past Atlanta to try to run Bastion comps again.
No, and I think they'll absolutely do that. But the thing is, I think Decay is definitely going to have that scouted and at least have an answer prepared for it.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, that I think will be one to watch, provided that both teams play up to their potential, or that
Yeah.
both teams go full clown fiesta. Either way, it should be interesting. Next, the LA Valiant versus the Vancouver Titans. Valiant, man. Vancouver's doing well, but Valiant.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the Valiant as well.
Yeah, moving to APAC, we have the Seoul Dynasty versus the London Spitfire for, in my notes, it says the third time in 2 weeks. And also our final APAC match of the season. Seoul. Just Seoul.
Soul. Soul.
Ouch.
And then back over to NA for the last three.
Yeah, Dallas Fuel versus Paris Eternal.
Paris.
Paris. Just Paris, man. San Francisco versus. Did I type this correctly? I
I,
don't
I,
think I typed this correctly.
I
There's
have to
no
go.
way.
I have to go and look it up. It might be on like one on a Friday, one on a Saturday situation. San
Oh no,
Francisco
it's
versus
San Francisco
Atlanta.
versus Atlanta Reign. I got my birds mixed up. I do that sometimes. I don't know why
Uh,
it's I don't know why I did this, but yeah, San Francisco
I'm
versus
now just
Atlanta Reign.
imagining you as the look at all these chickens kid.
Oh my god, where the birds sing words and the flowers kick your ass. Um yeah. San Francisco versus Atlanta is
San,
San Francisco.
San
San
Fran.
Francisco has the ability to cheese, and also, again, I think after getting wrecked by Philly, they're not going to drop a map if they can help it. They are clicked into gear. They are ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, our final regular season match. And for only the second time this season, we were supposed to have like 5 of these, but for only the second time, the battle for Los Angeles. The Valiant versus the Gladiators.
And this one is one of the few times where I don't have like a strong opinion as to which team I think is better going into this because they're both consistently inconsistent.
This is the first time in a very long time that they have been evenly matched because season 1 Valiant pulled way ahead of the season 1 Gladiators, and season 2 Gladiators did a hell of a lot better than the season 1 Valiant. And right now, like our last battle for LA was in April.
Yeah.
Right now, we are looking at teams that are the only thing that separates them in the standing is the Atlanta Reign. Again, we're looking at 9, 10, 11 here.
Mm-hmm.
So it could go either way. And of course, that means I have to go for the Valiant.
I'm gonna flip a coin, honestly. I genuinely like both are so inconsistent.
It's absolutely a coin flip match, but I am biased as fuck. So here we are.
Heads is gonna be Gladiators, tails is gonna be Valiant.
All right.
Valiant.
Wings out.
Yeah,
I'm
sure. I have merged
sincerely
from the party they did.
I am sincerely hoping that this is I'm hoping for a Valiant win, but I'm also hoping for a map 5. Go the distance. I want to see things evenly matched. I want to see this throwdown. I want this to be, if not the banner match of the week, then at least one of them.
Mm-hmm. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Like the Battle for LA matches always deliver.
This is going to be the first time in a long time that I'm not sitting in the stands screaming the point counterpoint of wings out, shields up. And honestly, I'm really going to miss it. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
excited for this, but I am also so sad.
Yeah. I completely get it, and it's not the same without the energy of the crowd to amp things up.
It's not the same without us crazy people yelling at each other and then hugging it out afterwards.
Hmm.
Because that's what we do. That is what we do. So yeah, that's our final week of regular season play. On the one hand, I can't believe it's coming to an end, and on the other hand, what is time? So
Yeah,
yeah, we
that's
also had a good chunk of weeks in the middle, of course, where nothing was happening because nobody knew what was happening and we were all just doing our best. But yeah, I'm a little sad that we're going into our last week of regular play.
me too. I am definitely gonna miss it now that it's kind of winding down.
But we will enjoy this. We're going to have some crazy ass matches this weekend, and I am looking forward to it.
Hmm.
So, yeah. Do we want to do the traditional Reddit check just to make sure that nothing else has exploded in the 2 hours that we've been at this?
Yeah, let's find out.
Just to make sure that nothing else has gone utterly bonkers. Aside from, again, London playing. I'm still not over London versus Seoul for the third time in 2 weeks. I still feel so bad for London having to make up all of those matches that they missed right at the end here. Just, it's tough to be London right now. It's tough to be a London fan right now. It's just
Um,
sympathy for y'all.
Only thing that's kind of sticking out to me right now is that congrats to Toby on the 4-year anniversary of his professional debut.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah,
Good for him.
one of the few guys from that like early era that's still kicking and still doing it at a high level.
My dude. Well, all right. Good for Toby. Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think at this point we can wind this down. I am Katie. You can follow me all over the social medias as well as on YouTube and Twitch at Kiaxet. That is Kiaxet. I haven't been streaming as much, but I have been playing Capture the Flag Blitz whenever it shows up as the arcade mode because I've realized that's my favorite game mode pretty much ever. So if it comes up again, you might well see me in there running around being the only support on the field. It's a good time.
I'm CJ. You can follow me on Twitter at the_rage_nerd and also follow Decima_OW on Twitter. That is the team that I coach for. Yeah. Same
Yeah.
announcement as usual for me.
You got any upcoming tournaments?
Sadly, there aren't as many, and we're kind of in the process of doing a bit of recruiting to shore up the roster. Like, we are in the process of finding a new main tank because the one that we had ended up kind of getting very busy in real life, so we needed to fill that spot. And so yeah, that's what's happening right
Now, whenever you talk about one of your players, I'm just going to mentally finish it with in prison
now. No, none
because
of
of
those.
the. I know. But my God, you dropped that diva bomb on me, and I'm still laughing.
Yeah.
All right. As always, we end this with the important stuff. Stay inside if you are able. Stay safe. Wear a mask when you go outside. I don't care if you're just outside to check the mail or walk your dog or whatever it is you're doing. If you step outside your door, wear a mask. Social distance. Support your essential workers. Black Lives Matter. Black Trans Lives Matter. Black LGBTQIA Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Protest if you are able. Protest safely. Support your protesters if you're not able to get out there yourself. Defund the police, arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor, register to vote, make sure you are registered, double check, register for mail in voting. If you are worried about your mail in ballot, you, depending on the laws of your state, you may be able to drop it at a polling location or at a ballot collection location. So do your research there, but remember to vote. Vote. Stay safe. We love you. Anything else?
Can't think of anything.
Oh, support the post office. Call your representatives. Tell them
Yes.
to fund and save the post office.
Yeah.
That's important. That. But with that being all the news that's fit to print, enjoy the last week of regular season play, and let's see 9.